The COVID-19 pandemic has swept the globe with unprecedented amounts of stress and anxiety as we cope with uncertainty over our own health and the health of our loved ones, changes to how we complete everyday routines, and prolonged periods of isolation and loneliness. This has all taken a serious toll on the mental health of many Americans, as shown by the increasing rates of anxiety and depression, but our new reality is especially affecting those who have a history with disordered eating. Scientists have cited many concerns about the impact that isolation and increased anxiety has on eating habits, including but not limited to developing body image issues due to increased time spent on social media, turning to binge eating as a way to comfort oneself, or restricting caloric intake as a means to feel in control during stressful times. In this video, I will explore how one's mental health and environment can significantly influence one's susceptibility to developing or exacerbating an eating disorder, using scientific research on the influence of decreased mental health and isolation on our eating habits. There are many levels on which individuals can experience conditions that are categorized as a form of disordered eating or an eating disorder. Disordered eating is a broad term that can describe a range of irregular eating behaviors that are not necessarily categorized under a specific illness. Anorexia is characterized by a distorted body image with an unwarranted fear of being overweight and a low body weight. Bulimia is characterized as a distortion of body image and obsessive desire to lose weight, in which bouts of extreme overeating are followed by depression and self-induced vomiting, purging, or fasting. Orthorexia is characterized by an obsession with eating foods that one considers healthy. Finally, body dysmorphia involves an obsessive focus on a perceived flaw in appearance, typically body weight or shape. Knowing the characteristics of each of these conditions can help us further understand how the COVID-19 pandemic poses the risk of worsening such behaviors. Many individuals dealing with eating disorders rely on interpersonal and social connections as a means of creating a support system to aid them along their recovery process. COVID-19 collapsed many of these support systems as the nationwide quarantine required individuals to socially distance and essentially isolate themselves. Healthful behaviors that help individuals cope with eating disorders such as exercise, social time with friends and family, and attending support groups or regular patient treatment became unavailable. Without these coping mechanisms, quarantine created the perfect environment for relapse or the development of an eating disorder, as individuals were spending unprecedented amounts of time alone without a sense of structure or routine, in some cases constant access to food, and spending increased amounts of time online. These conditions were worsened by the fact that the pandemic has overall increased rates of anxiety and depression, which can often trigger relapses or the start of an eating disorder, as individuals utilize food as a means of comfort or source of control in their lives. While thorough data analyzing the short and long-term effects of the pandemic on eating disorder conditions is not yet available, scientists have published their concerns and predictions about the impact of the pandemic on those suffering from these conditions. Some of the most prominent increased risk factors exhibited during the pandemic are increased media exposure, disruption to daily activities, social isolation, modified physical activity and sleep, and anxiety over contagion. Additionally, normal behaviors and support systems that have been inhibited by the effects of the pandemic include social support, emotional regulation, and access to treatment and care. One particularly notable aspect of quarantine was how much online conversation was being had about food. It would be nearly impossible to listen to the news and talk to peers without listening to some sort of conversation about diet, whether it be discussing how not to gain the quarantine 15, as in 15 pounds, how eating a healthy diet is important for immune function, or how families are preparing for food shortages by buying in bulk. One of the biggest contributing factors to increased rates of anxiety and body image distortion is the increased time spent on social media. Without our normal means of connecting with one another and a lack of stimuli, many individuals, particularly young teens, saw a huge increase in their screen time, with popular apps such as TikTok and Instagram being a large source of that increased screen time. While social media may certainly be a positive way to feel connected to friends and families while in isolation, it also poses serious risks to one's mental state. Diet trends and diet culture runs rampant across these apps, and more often than not, they contain inaccurate and even dangerous information. TikToks displaying weight loss results, what someone ate in a day, promoting special metabolism-enhancing drops easily get thousands of views. These videos can be extremely harmful to a highly impressionable young teen and promotes unhealthful obsession with one's eating behaviors and body image. Increased time on social media has been directly linked to a decrease in mental health quality, increase in anxiety, and lowered self-confidence. This endless scrolling on apps such as TikTok and Instagram is devastating to our own mental health and creates the perfect environment for disordered eating habits to flourish, as we can become stuck in the endless cycle of comparing ourselves to those who we see online. These conversations online bring a heightened awareness to food and may result in binging or restricted eating behaviors. For other individuals, physical activity and the limitations of being able to go to the gym, workout classes, or be active in nature may result in a heightened awareness and anxiety over body weight and shape, which may trigger disordered eating. Perhaps one of the greatest risks posed to those with disordered eating behaviors is the impact of heightened anxiety and isolation on one's mental health, and how that subsequently affects our relationship with food. In one early telephone survey during the pandemic, of individuals with different eating disorders found that 38% of patients reported increased eating disorder symptoms, and 56% of patients reported an increase in anxiety. Many individuals with a healthy relationship with food may associate some foods with aspects of comfort, which is perfectly normal. However, the decrease in mental stability associated with COVID-19 may allow some individuals to turn to food as a form of comfort in an unhealthy way, particularly with binge eating. Scientists have vocalized these concerns as they describe how, in being home for days upon end, there is no escape from distancing oneself from food at home, and there are limited opportunities to leave home to buy food. This may lead to anxiety over binging on the family's food when restocking is problematic, and may lead to further family conflict, heightened emotional arousal, depression and anxiety, as well as the likelihood of increased self-harm or even suicidality. The isolation and anxiety evoked by the COVID-19 pandemic has affected everyone across the globe, but those with diagnosed eating disorders and disordered eating habits are particularly at risk of its adverse effects. In cases of those with eating disorders, one's normal daily routine, balance between home and social life, and network of mental support is crucial to recovery. When those aspects of normalcy are removed, individuals become more vulnerable to previous triggers and may be more likely to develop dangerous habits with their eating. Since the effects of the pandemic and quarantine are still recent, it is crucial to recognize that no thorough research has been available concerning the direct effects on changes in eating disorder conditions. The information discussed in this video, however, is hypothesized by scientists based on well-researched correlations between eating disorder conditions and mental states, such as increased anxiety, depression, and self-isolation, that are characteristic of what many individuals felt during the quarantine time period. Knowing the risks of relapse or the development of an eating disorder during this difficult time period can help us understand coping mechanisms and ways to sustain healthful eating patterns during this difficult time. Experts in eating disorders have encouraged those with a history or current diagnosis to continue to reach out virtually to the support systems that may not be existing in person. This includes therapy or support group sessions that may be conducted virtually, and staying in contact with friends and family while being safe in terms of social distancing. Experts also suggest establishing a routine while in isolation, with activities that are stimulating and productive, as well as planning meals in advance to avoid tendencies to binge. Above all, it is extremely important to be compassionate to oneself as we all navigate this difficult time.